Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So we're in patch 6.17 now, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering what exactly are the best or strongest champions for this patch, which ones should you be watching out for, and essentially picking or banning. It does feel like a lot of new things have changed this patch, and there's a lot of new champions that are must pick or ban, so a lot of new faces. So if you guys do end up enjoying this video, let me know by hitting that like button. But this video specifically is going to be made in collaboration with pro guides and name you're all familiar with. I'll have a link down below to their website where you can have a free trial, where they also have a cool feature that you can talk to high-low players almost at any time, asking them almost any question. Definitely make sure to check it out down in the description below. Alright, so the first champion I want to talk about, and usually the one that I believe to be is the strongest of the current patch, which is going to be somewhat of a surprise, is Zac. Now, if you were to look at straight statistics, he doesn't really seem to be the strongest at the very moment, but I do feel like Zac is extremely underrated. He actually used to be very strong back when Riot buffed his elastic slingshot and just the range that he can jump at. The range is still very much there, and you obviously max it first, so he's going to be having probably one of the best ganking potentials out of any junglers in the game. Now, I actually thought he was already quite strong in the previous patch, but I decided not to talk about him, and I mean, he was sort of under the radar, but I feel like we're slowly starting to see his reemergence, and he's slowly getting picked more and more. So consider this a heads up. Zac is definitely making a comeback, and he's probably a champion that you either will want on your team or ban it so that the enemy team will not get. It'll still just take a little bit of extra time for people to slowly catch on. But if you guys end up picking up Zac and you want to play him, then here's my recommended build. The runes at first may seem a little bit weird, but I took this straight off of Meteos, who I personally think is a great Zac player. So what does he have? Attack speed reds, magic resistance per level blues, and your yellows and quints are both cooldown reduction per level. Because as you see in the item build, you don't really get that much CDR other than Spirit Visage, which with the 30% at level 18 in your runes is exactly 40%. So this should definitely work out for the most part, even though the rune page is very unique and specific to Zac. But moving on to the second champion we'll be talking about, it's gonna be none other than Yasuo. So only just a few days ago, I did make a video specifically talking about Yasuo and how his win rate has just absolutely spiked. And I mean going from something along the lines of maybe 51 or so percent, which is for the most part even already pretty good for Yasuo, all the way up to maybe around 55% if not higher. Now the reasons for this, like I said in the video, are actually quite a few, so if you want to know a specific detailed information about that, I highly recommend checking it out. But for the most part, it's just the tanky kind of build that you play, Fervor of Battle just working way too well, the bug fixes on Yasuo happening over the course of a couple of patches, and apparently some new bug that currently exists on Yasuo. When you put all of these together, I mean, it does sort of make sense as to why his win rate is just much higher than it really should be. So at the very moment, you probably want to either abuse the fact that he's just very strong at the very moment, obviously using the proper build and probably playing him top lane, even though you can still go mid lane and probably go the same build and do well. Or on the other hand, you might just want to ban him, not risking that the enemy team ends up picking him up and just absolutely destroying your top laner, or maybe even losing top lane, but Yasuo obviously still scaling really well into late game, being a monster regardless. All in all, Yasuo a very strong pick, probably not a champion you want to have on the enemy team, especially if fed, especially with the current build and maybe even the current bug that exists, so just play it safe and either ban him or pick him. But if you're fortunate enough to get Yasuo in the top lane, then here's my recommended build. It's a relatively tanky-ish kind of item build, Phantom Dancer for the damage reduction, Frozen Mallet because it's just really good on him, the lifesteal from Bloodthirster with Infinity Edge for the 100% crits, and of course Guardian's Angel or some other defensive item. You definitely want Fervor of Battle in your masteries, and you want to have 29% attack speed in your runes. Again, it's all synergizing off of the fact that your Fervor of Battle will be your main source of damage, while the items that you get for the most part are somewhat defensive, yet still have offensive components. Moving along to champion number 3, here I want to talk about Gangplank, another top laner and even mid laner that did get nerfed this patch, and he's definitely not as strong, but for the most part, in my honest opinion, he's still a must pick or ban. Even though his laning phase did get nerfed since the mana cost on his W went up and the damage on his ultimate went down on the earlier levels and the cooldown has been increased as well, he is still one of those champions where if you play him well enough, I mean, chances are he'll still have a pretty decent laning phase. His ultimate, the damage, yeah, got lower, but the slow is still there, and I mean, the cooldown is up as well, but it just feels like the utility and the usefulness of the ultimate is still very much there. And at the end of the day, if the Gangplank is skilled enough to get past the slightly weaker laning phase, his late game is still gonna be about the same, only only very slightly weaker. And Gangplank, in my opinion, is definitely one of the best late game champions because not only does he scale very well, but it just takes one great barrel and that can easily be the deciding factor as to whether or not you win either a team fight or just a game in general. So all in all, I definitely believe Gangplank is still a very strong champion. Yeah, maybe not as strong as the previous patch, but without question still a must pick or ban. And just like the other champions, here's my recommended build for this guy. You still want to go for that Thunderlords in your masteries, then your items are without question going to be something along the lines of Trinity Force, Duskblade, Static Shiv, maybe even something like a Yomu's for the extra armor penetration, and then top it off with maybe something like Asterix Gauge, maybe a Last Whisper, or some defensive item. But let's move on to the next champion in the list, where we'll be talking about Kha'zix. So moving our way back into the jungle, I mean, Kha'zix is very strong. He is a carry jungler. He doesn't really need that much farm because his ganking potential is just very strong. And I don't know how many times I've seen a jungle Kha'zix simply carry a game just from the sheer amount of presence he can have, the overall dueling potential he has in the jungle, and just Kha'zix being a good champion. His clear in the jungle really isn't the best in the world, but it's definitely not the worst in the world. I mean, his W gives him that AoE clear, and once you kill all the small minions, your Q ability is literally designed to kill that big minion very quickly. But one thing that I do like about Kha'zix a lot is the fact that he's one of the few-ish kind of jungle champions that can definitely solo dragon fairly early thanks to the isolation damage from his Q. All in all, he's got good ganking potential with his upgraded E, he has great isolation and dueling power with his upgraded Q, his ultimate with the invisibility lets him sneak into certain areas if you play it well enough, and the reset on his E ability is always going to be there, so all it takes really is just one mess up from the enemy team and you can go off, resetting constantly and just cleaning up a fight. But let's quickly talk about what kind of build you want to do when playing jungle Kha'zix. So Thunderlords is usually still the way to go just because it adds that little bit of extra damage to your overall burst when you E on the target, W, Q, auto attack. And your item build is going to be something along the lines of just straight armor penetration, again with your warrior enchantment, Yomu's, Duskblade, and the Last Whisper. And then you have the Tiamat as well just to give you that extra power and extra combo in your overall burst. Just overall a very strong build, but you can always swap out an item like the Last Whisper or the Tiamat for instance for something more defensive like Guardian's Angel. But let's chill in the jungle just for a little bit longer because the next champion we'll be talking about is kind of a random one, but he's definitely been seeing a rise in popularity. Kog'maw. Now the thing about Kog'maw, especially right now, is the fact that he can definitely be played as an ADC champion in the bot lane, but he can also be played as a jungler, all thanks to the jungle item. Kog'maw has become one of those champions, and he's kind of been like that for the most part, just even more so now, where you just simply stack the hell out of attack speed and items that give you some form of on-hit damage, and you essentially get to the point where you press W, and you can AFK, maybe take a washroom break, and when you come back, either everyone is going to be dead or you're going to be dead, one of the two. That is pretty much what he has become, and I mean, I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I mean, it is kind of strong. And this is only going to get more and more popular, especially Kog'maw in the jungle. I'm already starting to see it quite often, and I feel like I'm only going to be seeing it more and more frequently. Now, there have been many times where I've seen it and it's just simply not that good. I mean, I've seen people just do horribly with it. But on the other hand, I've also seen Kog'Maws do insanely well to the point where it kind of makes you wonder, how do you stop them without having some assassin on your team? But either way guys, Kog'Maw in the jungle or even in the ADC, a very strong pick, definitely a must pick or ban. But let's take a look at what kind of build you want to do specifically for Kog'Maw jungle. So you want to run attack speed Reds and attack speed Quints, while the other two are essentially magic resistance and armor. Fervor of Battle without question for that extra added on-hit damage. And your item build is just going to be stacking the hell out of attack speed. So you have the Devourer enchant, you have Runans, Gwinsus, you have Blade of the Rune King, you obviously have your Zerker boots, and once you have all of those bad boys there, you want to just top off with that gorgeous Frozen Mallet. Gives you that extra on-hit effect where you slow the targets, makes you stick on them easier, even makes you kite a little bit easier, and also gives you that much needed tankiness. Next up, we'll take a look at the mid lane and talk about one specific champion, Aurelion Sol. This guy has definitely been going up and down with several patches. I mean, there has been patches where he was insanely strong, then suddenly he's not, but now he's slowly making his return. The reason he's so good is because you just simply build that new Hex-like item on him, the Ice one, and you just max your W. You AFK in the lane, you push in the wave, almost no one can match your pushing potential, especially within the first few levels, and it makes it very, very awkward for your opponent to try and CS. On top of this, Aurelion Sol is a fantastic roamer thanks to his E ability, and especially if you go teleport, because bot lane is extremely important at the moment since First Blood Tower and bot lane not having that fortification buff is extremely vital. His build is also very annoying because it is awfully tanky. You have the Rylai's Crystal Scepter in there as well, and you have this consistent damage just constantly coming out over and over and over. Aurelion Sol himself is hard to kill, and he's just a very annoying champion. Not much more to say other than the fact that, yeah, Aurelion Sol is great again. He's finally making his way back into the mid lane, and you definitely want to start watching out for him. The build for Aurelion Sol is as follows. You want Storm Raider Surge in your masteries, and your items, you want that GLP Ice item, the new Hextech one, Boots of Swiftness usually because you don't really need CDR, and then top it off with that Rylai's Crystal Scepter because of the synergy, Void Staff because it's Void Staff, Rabadons because again it's also Rabadons, and then maybe finish it off with something like a Liandry's Torment, or you can even get it a little bit sooner. Again, the idea here is not necessarily to have just flat out burst damage, but a lot of annoying consistent damage that's just always there, and the synergy between these items and his kit is just perfect. And the final champion we'll be talking about is going to be down in the bot lane, and it's going to be Soraka. To me, the support has always been between Soraka and Sona, and this time we have Sona in the honorable mentions list because I wanted to make a little bit of extra room for Soraka, since in the previous video like this one I talked about Sona. Soraka is still that annoying heal bot where she can't really die, especially with the runes and items that you get, and I mean, it's just not fun to play against her. She just makes things very complicated. Killing a single target when you catch someone off is almost impossible if Soraka is beside them. I don't feel like there's a whole lot to say about her. I mean, I feel like everyone kind of understands what Soraka is and just how annoying and strong she can overall be in a game, and just how difficult she can be to deal with. So there's really not much more to say. So here's the build for Soraka, the items and the runes and the masteries. Hopefully it's all straightforward. But before we end off the video, guys, there are a couple of honorable mentions, the first of which being Sona. Now, Sona, like I said, it's either her or Soraka in the actual 7 list. This time it's Soraka, but Sona just as good, if not maybe even better, so you definitely do not want to count her out. I also want to give quick mention about Echo. I mean, Echo Triforce right now, or even Titanic Hydra, mainly in the top lane. I mean, no surprise, it's simply strong. I mean, Tank Echo just seems to be coming back over and over and over. No matter how many nerfs he's received, there's always some kind of new build for him where it just simply works, and it just works better than AP Echo. But I think Riot is going to be trying to actually nerf this even more, so hopefully this will not be a thing anymore and AP Echo will be back to his glorious days. Next up, we also have Jhin, an ADC champion that is very strong. He did unfortunately receive some nerfs this patch, but I still believe he is a very strong champion, just barely not strong enough to be in the actual 7 list. But regardless, the nerfs really weren't that big, and he's still probably a very good champion, so very worthy of the honorable mentions list. And the final champion is going to be Jace. Now, this is an up-and-coming champion. I'm sure you guys saw me play him in my Journey to Masters series. Very strong if played in the right hands, and someone you should really start slowly looking out for because he will be making a return. But either way, guys, that is about it for this video. I mean, there you have it, the must pick or ban champions for patch 6.17. If you did enjoy this video, let me know by hitting that like button, subscribe if you haven't, share this with your friends so everyone else knows what to do for this current patch when playing ranked or even normal draft. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you for the next one. Peace.